In this video, we're going to do a complete tutorial for Keepa step by step, and we're going to give you 7 tips as a bookseller on how to use Keepa. And I'm here with Joji, who's done 200,000 this year selling used books. He primarily does flips from eBay, Amazon, back to Amazon. So he's going to talk a little bit about that too. But let's dive into the video, man, and pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, let's do it, man. All right, I'm going to go and share my screen. So this is, again, just for the complete beginner, and we're going to head on over to keepa.com. So the first tip that I have for you is how to easily identify what a book's worth. Okay, so when you're out there scanning at a thrift store or a library sale, it's like you probably use Scout IQ or Scoutly, and you're trying to figure out hey, should I buy this book or not? Well, one easy way to determine what a book is worth is to look at just a couple features on the Keepa graph. So you will need to keep a subscription to see sales rank here, but sales rank is basically just a metric that Amazon uses to tell you how popular a product is in that category. So right now, you can clearly see, Avery, that this is a book, right? So this is going to be the books category. And this green line, which is called sales rank, every time we see that sales rank drop or improve, so 826,000 and it drops here down to 255,000, that book became more popular. And so that means that the book likely sold. So then you have this other metric here, this little black button, which is just named used. And this represents the lowest used price over time of this product. So all we're going to do with this first tip is simply just look at sales rank and use price and overlap the two. If we see the sales rank dropping, that means the book is selling. It's becoming more popular. And if we look at the lowest use price over time and we use our cursor and just move left to right over time and just look at what that price is, it gives us an idea of, hey, what is the price of this book on Amazon when it's becoming more popular, when it's buying? So Avery, if you're looking at this, what would you say this book is worth over the last year?
I can't see the price. What's the price say?
Right around $2.
$2, yeah.
So
I mean, probably $5 ish because shipping's $4, so $6.
So $2 plus shipping. Is this book worth something? Not really, right? And so the idea is that if you were to scan this or if you were to look at this and keep it, you should within a second or 2 seconds be able to just with your eye go, okay, this book is worthless. It's worth $2 plus shipping. It's not really worth anything. Now let me go and show you another book. This book, you'll notice, has fewer sales rank drops. So what would that mean, Avery, if it has fewer sales rank drops?
Doesn't sell as much.
Yeah, it doesn't sell as often. But what do you notice about the used price here, Avery? Can you actually see that used price over time?
Yeah, it's changing, going up and down.
But what is the value? What is kind of the average looking like in your head?
Is that 34, 22?
Yeah, it's 20 to 30, right? 20, 35.
Yeah.
So the point here, guys, is that the first book we looked at sold a lot, but it was basically worthless because it was always $2. But this is a book that sells less often, but its lowest use price is always between 25 and $30. Okay, now let's keep going. Here's a book that has even more value than the other one. So again, we're only looking at 2 things, which is sales rank that tells us when the book became more popular and when it likely sold. And then we're looking at that used price. So this book appears to have more sales rank drops than the previous one. And can you see the lowest use price of this book, Avery? What does this book look like it's worth?
70 to 40.
Yeah. So maybe as low as 40, but up to 70, right? So the idea here is that we're incrementally looking at books that have more value. And the goal is that when you're out sourcing and thrifting, you should be trying to find books that have more value, right? Because Avery and I both know that Amazon fees can actually be quite high, especially for books. But we're just getting more and more expensive. So here's a Halloween 2 book. And so again, same thing here. We're going to just look at these 2 features. So sales rank, we see that sales rank dropping. So that's telling us, hey, the book sold, became more popular. And now we're looking at this lowest use price. And now, Avery, can you see what the lowest use price of this book looks like over the last year?
$150.
$150. So we're getting even more expensive, but we can even go more than that. There's books that are worth over $300. So let's look at this book here. Again, just the two things, lowest use price and sales rank. This book actually is great. It sells all the time, great sales rank. And can you see what the lowest use price of this book is over time?
Wow, 329.
Yeah, 320. So the point here being is that how do you easily identify what a book's worth? Well, you just look at, is it selling first? What's the cheapest price of that book over the last year on Amazon? And when you overlap the two, it tells you, hey, this is what it's selling for. That's what it's worth. So you should be able to tell literally within a second that this first book that we looked at is basically worthless. This one doesn't sell very much, but it has a little bit of value. This one has significantly more value, sells a little bit more. This Halloween book has a ton of value, doesn't really sell that often, but it has a ton of value.
Consistent though. One
Yeah,
thing I
yeah.
really like, I like the consistency. All these Keepa graphs, they all have consistent sales.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Details.
I use Keepa when I'm like at Goodwill's or
Mhm.
a library sale, and I come across like you guys will do this. You'll scan a book with Scott IQ and it'll say like $900 profit. Now,
Right.
in that scenario, I always look at Keepa. Like if the E-score is 2 or
Yep.
something, or the E-score doesn't exist, I look at Keepa. And
Yep.
one thing I like to see is if over the years, if it has
Like this.
consistent sales, I know eventually one day I'll probably sell it.
Yeah, exactly. And actually leads us into, tip number 2 here for Keepa is you on the bottom right here have the ability to toggle different time periods. You can look at sales rank and use price over the last day, over the last week, over the last month, 3 months. But going back to what Avery said is like looking and expanding at the entire historical selling data of a book is actually tremendously valuable. Like I can look at this book over the last 3,600 days, which is how long Keepa has tracked this book. So I can look at what the cheapest price of this book was, like the lowest use price, back on September 4th of, is that 2013? Like that's a long time ago. But going back to what Avery said is, what are you seeing with the sales here over the last decade, pretty much?
Yeah, consistent.
Just consistent sales,
That
right?
green line's just going up and down like
going
a
up and
heart
down.
rate monitor.
It's just dropping. So that's just one more tip is look at and expand the entire historical selling data because it's going to give you more information about, hey, is the product that I'm buying actually a good deal? Like, for example, this book, you might be looking at a year and you're like, okay, over the last year, it can get as low as 35. It's got as low as, 39 there. A lot of times it's over 80. And you want to know, well, is this book just inflated over the last year or has it been selling well? And it's like, well, over the last 2,700 days, this book has been awesome. It's been, it's been great. It has dipped a little bit sometimes, but it's been really great. So that's the second tip there. And then the third tip for you, and this is one that I utilize pretty much all the time in my online book arbitrage business, and that's zooming in on the Keepa graph to see specific periods of time. So for those of you who don't know, online book arbitrage is a really simple concept. It's just try to find a book on Amazon that holds historical selling value at let's say $100, but momentarily, for whatever reason, it's $30 on Amazon right now. Well, if you know that that thing really is inherently worth $100, well, why don't you just buy it for 30 and sell for 100? But going back to that tip is zooming in on the Keepa graph. If you left click with your cursor and then drag and let go, you can actually zoom in and see very short periods of time on the Keepa graph. So I'm actually looking at 4-hour increments, and I can see that this book got down to $31.74 on March 23rd, which in my eyes would have actually been a decent pickup considering that this book
You probably purchased that. Don't lie. That little green dot, that little green line going down is probably you.
Yeah, it actually was not me, but somebody definitely did buy this book, and you can see we'll get into this a little bit later with offer count. But this bottom graph, this black line on the bottom graph called used offer count, tells us the number of people selling that book on the listing, and you can actually see that once that book got down to that price, what happened to the offer count here, Avery?
Yeah, it went down
7 to 65, right? So someone picked it up.
So somebody sold out.
Yeah, so I didn't pick it up, but whoever did, clearly, great deal there. They picked it up for maybe $38 with shipping, probably sold it up here for $80 and made $20 profit, something like that. So let's go on to the next tip here, and that is to understand the relationship between used offer count and price. So a little lesson here, Avery. What do you know about supply and demand? What's like the most basic, simple education you can give us on supply and demand?
More supply equals lower price.
Okay, and the opposite.
When the supply goes down, the price goes up.
Okay, so let's take a look at this, everyone. This is the Reader's Digest Merry Christmas Songbook. If I expand the historical selling data of this Christmas book over the last 4,500 days, and again, let's just make this super simple. Let's get rid of these other features, and let's just simply look at two things this time. So we'll look at, we won't even look at sales rank. We'll just look at use price, and we're going to get rid of all this other stuff, and we're just going to look at used offer count. So what do you notice here on this
Keepa graph? Inverse relationship.
Yeah, it's
when
literally
people sell out, the price goes up.
Yeah, it's literally just a mirror image of each other, right? And so, Avery, I know that this is a dumb question, but when would people want to buy this book?
When? Definitely when the price is the lowest. So when the supply is the highest.
I guess what I mean is like, this is a seasonal book though. Like, so
yeah, probably if it's Christmas, probably summertime.
Probably during Christmas, right? And so it's like, that's why the used offer count on this book always goes down during that time. And
Oh, I
One
thought you
more.
meant us as arbitragers. We want to buy it during summer.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But customers would want to buy it during Christmas.
Right. It's an unclear question. Customer wants to buy this during Christmas. We would buy this in the off season, right? But this is one of the, this is probably like a top 15 Christmas book that just is a great seasonal book. But one other way that we can tell that this is becoming more popular is looking at sales rank, and you can see how this has a U shape, right? Basically, the sales rank gets super, super low, basically right around early to mid December. Why? Because people who want to buy this book are buying it during December. So this is a book that you could basically buy year round for about $10. I mean, you can flip it for about $40. And a little plug to person I learned this from, Victor Gallegos. He's the master of seasonal online book arbitrage, and
he's a savage.
There's literally so many seasons out there that it would absolutely just blow your mind. But again, pro Keepa tip here is that you have to understand that, like Avery said, when the supply goes down, when there's fewer people offering something for sale, usually the price goes up because there's less downward competition for pricing. Because if I only have to compete with Avery, I might be willing to try to sell my book for more money than if I have to compete with Avery and Steve Rakin and Caleb Roth and 100 other sellers, right? So that's the first one. Now, again, let me show you how offer count and use price are in a relationship with each other. So you look at this book, you should be able to, from tip number one, establish that this book is worth nothing. It's basically, its use price is right around $1 to $3 plus shipping. Sales rank is dropping, which means people aren't buying it, but it's basically worth nothing. But again, you look at pro Keepa tip number 3, which is expand the historical data over the last 4,500 days. And if we zoom in here, what do you notice happen right here to the offer count here, Avery?
It drops off.
So,
and Amazon's not on it anymore.
Yeah, Amazon's not on the listing. So any guesses why, everyone? Well, it turns out that the author of this book actually died, I think on October 14th. So the author of this book is Harold Bloom. So if we just type in Harold Bloom and we just type in death, he died on October 14th, 2019. So if we go back to this book and we look at October 14th of 2019, literally that's right here. And the offer count literally that same day starts jumping down because why? People all of a sudden, they remember who this guy was. Let's buy his book, right? And so you actually see what happens, Avery, to the used price when the offer count goes from 100 down to 10 overnight.
Skyrockets.
It goes up. So literally a book that was worth nothing is now selling for $35. Pretty insane. And again, what we can see on the backside of this, Avery, is what happens when people stop caring about this and the offer count on the bottom starts going back up.
Price goes back down,
right? So it's just a really simple relationship between used price and offer count, the number of people selling it. Here's a great example of a seasonal high school book that always pops every year, does a great job in the off season. You can buy it for super low. And then again, same sort of thing, July, which is when textbook season for high school books pops. You can see how basically the used offer count gets really low, and you can see how the used price starts to go up a little bit. So there's another example for you. Great book to flip. Here's another great example of a pre-calculus book, and let's get rid of this new price. It makes things look a little weird. But what's crazy about this book is this is also August, September book. This is actually not a high school textbook. It's a college textbook. And you can see for the first 2 seasons of this book, it did great. It literally got super cheap in the off season, skyrocketed to over $100. But then the years after that are absolutely just garbage. They're terrible. Basically the used price of this book has stayed around $4 or $5, even though it's textbook season. The reason for that is, what do you notice happened to the offer count here, Avery?
Yeah, crazy increase.
Just crazy increase and never recovered, right? So again, we're just trying to show you the relationship that offer count matters. The number of people selling an item, number of people on the listing matters a lot. Now, let me give you one more example. This book here is called The Art of Avatar. And what I want you guys to notice again is if we look at this book over the last decade up until 2022, again, using pro Keepa tip number 1, you're like, okay, the lowest use price is $2. This book is worth absolutely nothing. It literally has no value at all. But then what do you notice happen here in 2023, Avery?
Number of used offers goes down. Amazon's no longer on it. The price goes up.
And again,
people actually sell out. That's a good sign. Whenever you see that black line just disappear, that's not a Keepa glitch. That just means there's no data on Amazon because nobody has the book for sale.
Exactly. I mean, look at this. Literally for 2-3 weeks, there's just nobody on the listing.
And that's important for Scout IQ people out there, because if you scan a book and you're doing live mode, it may return no price at all. That doesn't mean it's worthless. That just means there's nobody selling the book now. Like if you
Yep.
zoom in there, you can see
Yep.
people kind of hop on and hop off,
Yep.
and they're selling
Exactly.
out. Like look at that, the prices
Yep.
people are selling it for.
Yeah. This person
You know,
listed for $49.95. Literally, they're on the listing. This would have been let's see, 5 o'clock to 10. So they're on for like 4 or 5 hours. Literally sold
Mhm.
out immediately. And going back to this book, why did this book become so popular all of a sudden? Any ideas?
Is there a new? Is it like expired edition or something?
No, it's The Art of Avatar. Did you ever watch the first Avatar?
No. Did the? You tell me.
So the first Avatar I think came out, I don't know, like 2 decades ago. I don't know when it came out, but it took some insane period of time to make the second movie. And once they
Mhm.
announced that the second movie was coming out,
Gotcha.
basically everyone remembered that they liked Avatar, and people started buying the Avatar book in anticipation for the movie. And going back to offer count, what do you notice is happening to the used price of this book as the offer count started to recover?
Goes back down.
It's going back down, right? So I hope that was clear, everyone, that offer count and used price are in this inverse relationship with each other. So I hope that
100%.
makes sense. Okay. The next tip is actually a fascinating one, and that's that sales rank is dynamic, and that sales rank is often very, very misleading. So what we're going to do is go to Keepa and go to Keepa Product Finder. And don't worry, I don't want to overwhelm you with what Keepa Product Finder is. Just look at the examples. I'm just going to type in a sales rank of 500.
If you guys want to learn more about flipping books, go follow Joji. His YouTube will be below. So he does.
Yeah.
This is what he does for a living. I mean, that between him being a chemistry teacher and flipping, he's done 200,000 on Amazon already, and it's August at a pretty healthy profit margin. He just snags deals like this, and he's got a bunch of videos that go over this. So definitely go check out his channel. It's all free information.
Yeah, I appreciate you. All free there. So what we're going to do is just look at books right now on Amazon that have a sales rank between 500,000 and 500,010. So literally, for all intents and purposes, these are books that Amazon is categorizing as being the exact same popularity. And what we're going to do is we're just going to open up a few of them, and I'm going to show you how, if you look at the Keepa graph, you're going to get a lot different information from what just the sales rank is. So let's actually we'll open this one here. We'll actually open, let's go one, maybe two more. We'll open this one as well. Let's see if we can open one more. These are going to show us books that are wildly different, yet have the same sales rank. So here we go, Invention by Design. So we can scroll down here to the Amazon product page. Actually says sales rank is 150,000. So I guess it might have just updated. But if we look at the Keepa chart, it might have, like, if we look at Keepa when it updated, it was just recently at 500,000. And if we take a look at this, I mean, what would you say about this, Avery? I mean, it sells. It doesn't sell a lot, but it sells, right? So
for sure.
That was a book that had a sales rank of 500,000 literally hours ago. Here's another book that, if we scroll down to the product page, it's actually at 520,000. So, sales rank is always changing all the time. But if we kind of zoom in, sales rank was literally at 500,001, like maybe an hour ago. What do you notice about this book? Does this book sell the same amount as the other one?
Can you go back to the other one real quick?
Here's the other one.
Yeah. So the one you just showed me sells more.
Yeah, like significantly more, right? But what's important is that if you were to scan that with Scoutly or ScoutIQ or with your Amazon Seller Central app on your phone, those books might give you 500,000, but
very different.
They're very different on the rate that they actually sell at, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll look at one last book. So we can actually see that if we zoom in here to the Keepa chart, this sales rank of this book is 500,003. What would you say about this book?
Doesn't sell much at all.
I mean, it sold twice or three times.
Yeah.
So the point is that sales rank often can be very, very misleading. And you might scan a book and it might say 2.5 million, when in reality, that's a book that could potentially be selling more often than a book that's ranked 500,000 right now.
Have you heard that every time a book sells, it drops to like 100,000 in sales rank?
Yeah, I have heard that before.
You can kind of see that right there.
Yeah.
Like look at that. What's it drop to?
Yeah, this one went to like 324,000.
Yeah. So if you're going out to a library sale and you scan a book and it just so happens to have just had a sale an hour ago, the sales rank's going to be very low, but it can quickly creep back up. That afternoon, when you go to list the book, it could have a much higher sales rank. And if you go to list the book a week later, it could literally be in the millions.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's here's a good example, right? You might scan this book on this day, August 3rd, it's $5.97. You might just automatically reject it because it's $5.90 and the sales rank is 2 million. But then if you scanned it the next day, all of a sudden the cheapest price is $19.95 and the sales rank is $334,000. That's like completely different. That's like the difference between red and green in terms of the trigger setup. So that's just the next Keepa tip is like, hey, if you ever have a question about a book and you want to deep dive into it a little bit more, just make sure that you're actually looking at Keepa every once in a while. I think it's really helpful.
And generally, you should be doing this with higher dollar books. Like, don't do this with $15 and below books. Not worth your time. Let the apps make the decision for you. Let Scout IQ turn green or red. But when it comes to a book, if you scan a book that has a $500 value, maybe it really doesn't, or maybe it does, or maybe it has more value. But you don't know the whole story until you look at the used price over the course of several months.
Yeah, that's a really great point to make. If you're doing bulk or you're doing tons of scanning, absolutely rely on those. Yeah,
you're not going to have your employees, going through thousands of books a day.
Look at every single Keepa chart of every book that you scan. Absolutely not. But like Avery said, for books that definitely you think could potentially sell for more money, or maybe are listed at a high price and have a high sales rank, I would say absolutely looking at Keepa as well.
Or if you decide to do book online arbitrage like yourself, you're looking at Keepas all day, but you're probably making average $20-$30 profit per book that you sell. So for you to spend a few minutes looking at Keepa, it's nothing, because you'll make $20-$30 profit. So it's worth doing the research.
So right now my average buy cost is $18.14. My average sales price is $69.33, and my average profit per book is $33.71. So literally, I'm just reading Keepa graphs all the time. But that's also cherry picking. If you're out there at library sales resource, you're not cherry picking by any means. I'm literally cherry picking your guys' finds and trying to find the guy who is not looking at the Keepa chart for the book that they're listing on Amazon when they should be looking at that book on Keepa. So that's what I'm doing. I'm basically, trying to source off you guys. That's what I'm trying to do. And do it from the seat of my home. Okay, next Keepa tip here is, just because Amazon is selling the book new on the listing does not mean that you cannot sell it. I hear this so many times, and I think it's because the context matters. Definitely in 100%. Traditional online arbitrage, people are like, Amazon's selling it, you can't sell it, and you can't compete with Amazon. But if we're talking about,
that's new versus new, whereas this is new versus used.
Exactly.
And there's actually a different buy box. Amazon shows you a different screen for used items than it does for new items. So you can get a lot of eyeballs with used items. Whereas if you're new, Amazon, regardless of what they say, they are always going to take precedent over you, in my opinion. They're always going to put their offer first. When they sell out, sure, they'll give you sales, but they're not going to give you sales unless you price way under them. But used, most of the time, Amazon's not selling used.
And what I want to show you here is that if we look at the used price of this book, clearly it's below Amazon's new price. So I know that if you're a beginner, this is still super overwhelming for you. All I'm doing is adding one more feature here to the graph, and that's this yellow line or this orange line. It's called the Amazon new price. So all Keepa's doing is literally every single day tracking what was Amazon's new price and just showing this on the graph. So basically it's been very consistent, right around 1630, 1635 to 1639. But one thing that I want you to see is that the used price of this book is well below the new price. And a logical consumer is willing to save a few dollars in order to buy a book that's in good condition rather than spend, top dollar to get it brand new. But if we actually look at the offer count, what do you notice is happening to the offer count here, Avery? Is it plateauing? Is it only going up, or is it actually moving? Is it look like
at the beginning it was low? It's going up and down a little bit, which is a good sign. Not a whole lot of movement, but it's going up and down, which is good.
But what it shows to me is that people are buying it in used condition. If the used offer count was flat, or if it was literally just only ever going up and it wasn't ever ebbing and flowing, that would tell you that maybe people are not buying it. But again, the context that matters, that just because Amazon's selling a book in new condition absolutely does not mean
and look what happens when Amazon goes out of stock.
I know, it's crazy, right? Look at this. Look at the used offers. Pretty much go almost at one point go down to like one. Literally no one's selling this book, which is actually pretty crazy. Okay, let's actually look at the last tip that I have, and that is when you're out scanning at library sales and thrift stores or garage sales, don't ignore seasonal books. You might come across a book that has pumpkin on it, or it might have Halloween or Christmas on it. Those books potentially could be worthless for the entire year, except for the time when a customer would actually want to buy the book. So
textbooks too. Textbooks season,
as well.
August, January.
Right, textbook season. Exactly. So here's a book called Too Many Pumpkins. This is clearly a book that inflates in price during Halloween because it's for Halloween. And so if you are scanning this book literally anytime during the year outside of September, October, this book is worth literally $1. So it doesn't even have a very good sales rank. Literally thousands of people are just saying no, 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 no. But one thing that you'll notice is that, hey, this is a book that actually can inflate in price, like up to about $38, like a month before it's even Halloween. So again, this is online book arbitrage, seasonal arbitrage. I would say go check out Victor Gallegos and his free Facebook community page, because he gives away books like this all the time. But yeah, I mean, this is a book that basically, I mean, look how crazy this is, Avery. This is a Halloween book that gets to a used offer count of 0 on September 27th, which is a month before Halloween. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
this
it is
absolutely crazy. Okay, so that's a Halloween book.
And those people are coming in way too low, in my opinion. Those people hopping back on it, they could price much higher.
Oh, easily. But the funny thing is that a lot of these are major, big booksellers, right? They're not.
Right. They don't.
They're just going
off.
off.
Their software doesn't know better.
Yeah. The software's just like, what did we sell it at last time? Oh, $9.99. Okay, we'll list it for $9.99. But you know what's crazy is that we have sales rank drops of this book up to 30. But the point is, like last year, you could have chosen what you wanted to sell this book for, within reason, of course. You literally had an entire month in the most optimal time to sell this Halloween book, to literally sell for whatever you wanted. Probably not going to get like $100 for it, but you might get like 40, 50, $60 for it. So that's Halloween. What comes up after Halloween? Well, what about Thanksgiving? So this is the troubled history of Thanksgiving. Again, look at the last 1,400 days. It's actually a book that's actually quite new, but Amazon recently has stopped selling this over the last couple of years. Again, this is a book that gets super cheap in off season, and again, inflates in price. I mean, there's sales rank drops up to $48 when you could have bought this book for, $7 or so bucks. Now, what comes after Thanksgiving? What about the night before Christmas? What about Christmas? So here's another book that if you were scanning at a thrift store, it's $1 with a sales rank of, like, if you scanned it on this day, it has a 2 million sales rank. It's $1.74. That's a hard no, hard pass red. But, if you have the time just to every once in a while glance at the subject matter or the material you're looking at, like potentially something that could be worth something. Again, this is something that every year inflates in price up to $30. So another great score there. Now, what happens after that? Well, there's other seasons. So this is the Passover. So you can see over the last 4,000 days, again, this is another holiday that also gets super cheap in off season, gets super expensive when people want it. What's after that? There's Easter. I mean, here's over the last 2,300 days of this Easter eggs for Anya book. It's like a children's book that always inflates to $30. Again, absolutely worth nothing otherwise. And I think one more example is this is actually a book about 9/11, the little chapel that stood. And you can actually see there's the Twin Towers and the chapel right below it. And you can see how this book always right around September pops super high as well. So basically the last tip for you there was remember that a lot of products have seasonality to them, and while they might not be worth anything outside of the season, potentially they could be worth something during the season.
One of my best YouTube videos was actually talking about how people, and maybe I'll have you screen share in a second again, but I made a YouTube video about how people leave this type of book on the shelf all the time. People will scan books with Scout IQ or whatever software they're using, and it's only going to show the data that Amazon's API returns.
Right.
And one thing it doesn't show you is if there's no FBA offers.
Right.
Number one, it doesn't show you the other FBA offers because they don't exist.
Right.
And so you can price those books a lot higher. So can you kind of talk on if there are no FBA offers, if there are no prime offers, what type of pricing opportunities and therefore how much more profit can people make on those books?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'd say it comes down to looking at the Keepa chart. There's a new feature that came out actually last November. So it's almost been a year old, and it shows you what the used buy box price was recorded on Amazon over the last year since November. And a lot of books, like you mentioned, if they have great sales rank, which means that there's tons of people coming to that listing all the time, it's possible to get that prime bump. And so when I say establish the baseline value of a book, which was, tip number one, we're looking at the cheapest used price, which most of the time is not a prime seller. Like most of the time, that's a merchant fulfilled seller. And so kind of what Avery's talking about is that it's often that, especially if there's no FBA offers on that listing, that you could get a significant bump, maybe 15, 25, like even up to 50. Like there's even sometimes where you can sell a book for double or even triple what that cheapest used price is. Now, I would say inherently, you should be looking at what the market is offering, and that cheapest used price from all the merchant sellers is kind of inherently what the book is really worth because people are willing to sell it to you at that price. But going back to what Avery said, yeah, FBA offers, if there's no one on the listing, you have the potential to sell for significantly more.
And what's unfortunate is a lot of booksellers don't use their brain. They look at Scout IQ and they say, this is fact. Whatever Scout IQ says the profit is, that's what I'm going to get. And so they'll scan a book with 0 FBA offers. It'll say $10 profit.
Yeah.
When in reality, there's no FBA offers. So they could price it 3, 4, 10 times as high and potentially get the sale. 10 is that 10 times as high is kind of aggressive, but it's possible. I sold a Jewish set for $2,000.
Yeah.
The lowest price was $1,300.
Yeah.
And so I knew, and it was a high rank book, which maybe wasn't the best decision to price my book $700 above it,
Right.
but I got the sale. And after looking at Keepa over the years, I always go back to that book. It's called the Talmud 22 volume set. If you guys want to look it up, I mean, that thing sells for $4,000 some days. Yeah. So I can look at the Keepa graph. I can see the used offer value, and I can see if it's selling at that price. So do you mind if I share something real quick about GoToLister?
No, not at all. Let's do it. Let's see it.
Okay, cool. So this is actually something. So you're very meticulous with everything you do, like because you're doing book online arbitrage. You probably already know the minimum price you want to accept. You're monitoring your prices. You know exactly what you want for the books. But a lot of people that are going to library sales, maybe they're doing bulk books. They have hundreds of books they're listing, and oftentimes they forget in the library sale. They're like, "Oh yeah, Joji said that I need to look at the Keepa, blah blah blah." They did all that, but then they go home and they list it. And the problem with listing it is it's just going to list the buy box price. GoToLister is going to price it 20% higher, but still you're not making as much as you could if you use the techniques that we're talking about in this video. And so what we've done at GoToLister, and I programmed this kind of for myself because I really wanted this. I used to have 2 different boxes when I would go to library sales. One box would be for books with FBA competition. If the book had FBA competition, I knew that my listing software would price it at the right price because there's FBA offers. If you're competing against FBA offers, generally you want to match FBA prices. But if there's no FBA offers and you go to list this product, it's going to price it at a merchant fulfilled offer price. And so what we do at GoToLister is we notify you when there's 0 or few FBA offers on the listing. So then you can click on the book, look into it, use the techniques we're talking about. And you can literally make, $10, $20, $30 extra profit just by pricing strategically. Also on GoToLister, you can set minimum prices. So you could set, I do not want to sell this book for less than $35 because you looked at the Keepa and you saw that on average all year it sells for above $35. And sometimes during the year it might sell at $20, but you don't want to lose out on the profit and have your repricer go down below 20. So you can set minimum prices. So GoToLister will protect your profit. And in addition, we were talking a lot about offers books that have 0 offers. And books that have 0 offers mean there's no merchant offer and there's no FBA offer. And so if there's no offers at all, what's going to happen with Scout IQ or Scoutly? What's it going to show you if you're doing a live search?
I mean,
show you nothing.
It's going to show you nothing. And guys, I don't mean.
And so somebody's going to pass on that book immediately. They're going to be like, "Oh, this is worthless." When in reality, that book could have sold for $100 every time it was in stock, but it just happens to be out of stock. So if you purchase a book, you go home and you're listing it, and there's no offers, we'll actually show you an orange notification that says, "Hey, there's no offers." Period. And then what I recommend you do, go watch some Joji videos on how to use Keepa and learn, okay, at what price did this book used to sell for in the past? And what was on average? You don't want to be ridiculous with your pricing, but what's a greedy price I can ask for that's still realistic? And if you do this before you submit your batches, especially as a beginner bookseller, you can literally double your profits simply by on the books that you sell. You can double your profits on those books simply by pricing higher. And pricing more strategically. But if you don't consider books that have 0 FBA offers or books that have no offers at all, you're going to be leaving a lot of money on the table.
Can you go and share my screen as well? I just want to get one more point with that, just to show one example. Tell me when you can see my screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, so this is called The Rhetoric of Human. I did this series called 0 to 1,000 where I started with $0 and said, I don't have any money. I'm just going to start an Amazon FBA business. And eventually I got up to the point, it's on my YouTube channel, I got up to the point where I was able to source this book. I bought this book for $5 called The Rhetoric of Humor. And going back to that 0 or very low offer count, let's take a look. I actually picked this up back in January. And the time I picked it up, Amazon was actually on the listing new for $49.99. So let's actually look again. So that yellow orange price, that's Amazon's price. So when I actually picked this up physically from a person, in my neighborhood, Amazon was on the listing for $49.99. And then afterwards, Amazon went out of stock. Basically, you see how that orange line just stops, right? It doesn't continue on. So Amazon went out of stock. And you can see how basically the used offer count starting in early January, because this was textbook season, people were buying all these cheaper offers. Basically got down to the point where the offer count was 0. And so on this day, when I listed it, there's literally there's no one on the listing. So I said, you know what? I'm going to come in, list my book merchant fulfilled. So I didn't even sell it prime. I said, you know what? This is the absolute prime time to sell this book. I don't have time to wait 2 weeks to send it to Amazon. I'm going to sell it for an inflated price right now. And I was on the listing at $79.99 for about a day, and it literally sold. You can actually see then someone else came on the listing here.
Awesome.
So basically the point here is that I sold a book that just a day earlier was selling for $49.99, and I merchant fulfilled it for $79.99. And the only reason why I could have done that is because I understood how to read the Keepa graph, understood that there were no offers at that time, understand that sometimes there is advantages to merchant fulfilling versus selling FBA. So anyways, that was just one more example that I wanted to give you all.
Can you show your screen one more time and show what those purple dots are? I think that's really important for people to know that.
Okay, let me go and do that. So basically those purple dots are going to be all about just something called the buy box use price over time. Okay, so I know that we're probably overwhelming so many of you here because we've already got sales rank, we've got the lowest use price. Then we said Amazon's price. We're going to give you one more price, and that's called.
Yeah, and this is very important. And Keepa used to not always show this, and I wish they would have.
I know. It would have been amazing. You can actually see the first day they started actually measuring this metric was back in November of 2022. But these purple triangles here, they're basically, or pink, I don't know, purple, pink. They're going to tell you what the recorded used buy box price was. So if you didn't know, over here on the right, this is called a buy box. Like Avery mentioned earlier, there's 2 buy boxes. There's a new buy box, and then there's a used buy box. So what we're looking at here, this big one, is the new buy box. So if I wanted to add to cart, I'd have to spend $52. But right below it, there's something called the used buy box, where I could buy this right now from Apex Media for $34.98. And so what Keepa does is it's just pulling data from the Amazon webpage and just putting it on a graph. So every single day, consistently pulling data. And so right now, the buy box use price is $34.98. And if we actually look at the last week, you can actually see that right now, so the buy box use price is $35, right? So if we look at the last 3 years, what we can see now is that buy box use price has changed, has ebbed and flowed. And a lot of the times that used buy box price is above what that lowest used price is on Amazon. So kind of, this is a good indicator here. You can see how the used price was right around $24, but that whole time, the used buy box prices were higher than that. So
Yep. That's where the money's at. And that's why it's important, and that's what we do at Go To Listers. We try to show you those opportunities. Whatever listing software you're using, make sure that you're pricing books that have potential to be priced higher, FBA offer books, and books with no offers higher. Thanks so much for coming on, man. Hopefully we'll have you at Miami Sellers Conference speaking this next year.
Oh, that'd be awesome, dude. I'll definitely be there regardless of whether I'm speaking.
Oh, you're going to be speaking. Awesome. If you're going to be there, you're going to be speaking.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Go to MiamiSellersConference.com and check out your tickets. At the time you guys are watching this video, I promise you there's no cheaper price than now. And so the price is only going to continue to go up. It's a great time. We have booksellers, online arbitrage sellers, wholesalers. Great way to build your network. And we'll have Joji there. So really appreciate you. Also show Joji some love. You can show him love by going and subscribing to his channel. He has got a ton of free information out there. This man, and between him and his wife, put aside $100,000 a year in savings, which I just find so impressive because I reinvest all my money back into my business. So I'm trying to learn something from you. And much love. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Have a good one.